In the early hours of May 17, 2023, at around 2:30 a.m., police Scotland officers were dispatched to Beechwood Drive, located in a quiet neighbourhood in North Lanarkshire, following reports of a serious disturbance. When the officers arrived on the scene, they were confronted with a shocking and gruesome sight. 3 men, led by 36-year-old Ross Al-Gailani, had unleashed a savage attack on a former member of an organised crime gang. The violence was so extreme that the victim, James Sheridan, suffered catastrophic injuries, ultimately leading to the amputation of one of his legs. James Sheridan was no stranger to the criminal underworld. He had once been deeply involved in organised crime and was previously jailed after being caught in possession of cannabis and a significant sum of £104,000. However, during his time behind bars, Sheridan expressed a desire to leave the life of crime behind. He made it clear that he wanted out of the gang. Unfortunately, his decision to distance himself from the criminal organisation did not sit well with the gang's leadership. The gang boss, who was still bitter about the loss of the drugs and cash, held Sheridan responsible for the setback. Believing that Sheridan was to blame for the failed operation, the gang leader issued a chilling order. Sheridan was to be assaulted as punishment. This order set off a chain of events that would culminate in the horrific attack on Beechwood Drive. Enter Ross Al-Gailani, a man with a seemingly unremarkable background. Al-Gailani was a trained mechanic with only a minor criminal record, but somewhere along the line, he had been drawn into the orbit of a major organized crime group. Despite his limited experience in the criminal world, he had become an enforcer for the gang, a role that would see him involved in some of the most brutal acts of violence that the Scottish underworld had witnessed in recent times. Over the course of 7 weeks, Al-Gailani embarked on a violent rampage, carrying out a series of ruthless attacks on behalf of the crime group. His actions were marked by an extraordinary level of brutality, shocking even those familiar with the dark and dangerous world of organized crime. The attack on James Sheridan was the culmination of this spree, an act of retribution that left the former gang member permanently maimed and marked one of the most violent episodes in recent Scottish criminal history. When James Sheridan was released early from HMP Low Moss, a prison near Bishopbriggs, East Dunbartonshire, close to Glasgow, Scotland, on May 16th, he was tracked to a house in Coatbridge, Lanarkshire. Later that day, Al-Gailani and several others forced their way into the house, breaking down the front door. They found Sheridan in a bedroom with his girlfriend, Samantha Cook, and brutally attacked both of them with machetes and swords. The gang fled the scene as Cook managed to call 999. Sheridan sustained severe injuries to his head, arms, and legs. The wounds were so critical that medics initially doubted his survival, leading to the amputation of his right leg above the knee. He also lost 2 fingers in the attack. His girlfriend, Samantha Cook, also suffered significant injuries, losing 2 fingers from her right hand. Despite attempts to reattach them, they eventually had to be amputated. Remarkably, Sheridan appeared unfazed by the ordeal. A video that circulated widely in Scotland after the attack showed him joking about losing his leg. Later, his partner revealed to the media that the couple had since separated. Al-Gailani's next victim was Scott McCran, who was deeply in debt to the crime gang, owing them a significant sum of £19,000. McCran's horrifying experience began on June 14th, when Al-Gailani picked him up and drove him to a secluded house in Wishaw, Lanarkshire. Upon arriving at the location, McCran was commanded to strip down to just his boxer shorts. His hands and legs were then tightly bound, rendering him completely helpless. While he was restrained, Al-Gailani subjected him to a brutal beating, repeatedly striking him with a baseball bat. Over the course of the next 2 days, McCran estimated that he was hit with the bat over 100 times. The abuse did not stop there. McCran was also forced to place his hand on a hot cooker, and Al-Gailani struck his left hand with a machete 3 or 4 times, causing severe injuries. During this time, Al-Gailani contacted McCran's relatives, demanding they pay off the debt if they wanted him to be released alive. After enduring 2 days of relentless violence, McCran was finally allowed to leave. However, his nightmare was far from over. About a week later, Al-Gailani summoned McCran once again, forcing him to meet him and driving him back to the same house in Wishaw. This time, McCran was ordered to strip naked again, and the abuse escalated even further. Al-Gailani shot him approximately 20 times with an air rifle before beating him again with the baseball bat. In a particularly sadistic act, Al-Gailani involved a toddler who was present in the house, making the child hold the air pistol and ask McCran to raise his hands before shooting him twice. This added a disturbing element of psychological torture to the physical violence. Despite the horrific treatment he endured, McCran was able to escape after agreeing to present Al-Gailani with a plan to generate money for the gang. The court later heard that McCran required surgery following both attacks, including procedures to repair the damage to his hand and remove pellets from his body that were lodged there after being shot with the air rifle. Interestingly, McCran was initially one of the 2 men arrested in connection with the violent attack on James Sheridan, along with Al-Gailani. On July 7th, McCran was taken into custody alongside Tony Redpath, and they both faced serious charges of attempted murder. However, in a surprising turn of events, these charges appear to have been dropped. The reasons behind this decision, or the current status of their legal case, remain shrouded in mystery. In his final act as an enforcer, Al-Gailani targeted a couple living in Helensburgh, Argyll and Bute on July 4th. According to Police Scotland, a man entered their home in Helensburgh's Hood Court around 1 a.m. through an unlocked door and attacked a 19-year-old woman. The young woman, who likely had no prior connection to Al-Gailani, encountered him in the kitchen. He was armed with what appeared to be a police baton and was dressed in an orange high-visibility jacket with a reflective stripe, with the hood pulled up to obscure his identity. Without warning, Al-Gailani struck her twice with the baton as she tried to defend herself. The attack only stopped when her dog began biting his leg, forcing him to flee. The woman sustained significant tendon damage to her left hand, an injury that continues to affect her. The motivation behind this seemingly random attack in Helensburgh remains unclear. During the court proceedings, it was revealed that Al-Gailani was a trained mechanic with a limited criminal history, making his involvement in such severe violence both puzzling and alarming. His lawyer, Brian McConachie KC, argued that Al-Gailani had become entangled with an organized crime group during what he described as a chaotic 7-week period marked by these violent offenses. In court, Al-Gailani expressed his horror at watching footage of the attacks, which was shown during the trial. He compared it to watching a horror film and said that the audio alone made him feel physically ill. His lawyer emphasized that Al-Gailani struggled to accept responsibility for his actions and found it difficult to come to terms with the reality of what he had done. Al-Gailani, who has a family including children, now faces the heavy burden of knowing he will miss out on their upbringing due to his imprisonment. The circumstances that led an otherwise unremarkable family man to commit such extreme acts of violence remain a mystery. In sentencing, Judge Lady Stacey condemned Al-Gailani's actions, stating that his 16-year jail term would have been 18 years had it not been for his guilty plea. She described his behavior as despicable, calling his actions cruel, cowardly, and sadistic. Upon his release, Al-Gailani will be subject to an additional 3 years of supervision. The case leaves unanswered questions about how a seemingly ordinary man became involved in such dangerous criminal activities and carried out such heinous acts. Thanks for watching another episode on Inside Crime Files. That is it for today's video. Please like and subscribe, and I will see you on the next one. Thank you.